If there's one man who can help, if there's one man who can help, it's the man coming in here right now.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Full Metal Alchemist Fan Guide, an episode guide for the 2003 Full Metal Alchemist series, part of a podcast I'm starting called A Podcast Made Full Metal, in which we'll be going through 51 episodes and the movie, so that it's about one episode for every week of the year. That's kind of my plan, and these episodes air roughly every Friday by 9 p.m. Might miss a week or two there if I'm ahead of schedule with some two-parters, but roughly that's about when they'll be out. Today's episode is episode 5, The Man with the Mechanical Arm. As for the synopsis of this episode, basically the Elric brothers board a train. The train gets hijacked by these terrorists, and their leader is a man with a mechanical arm, the titular man with the mechanical arm, who are there to take a specific general hostage, demanding their leader be released from prison. Pretty typical terrorist stuff. Basically, Ed and Al manage to stop the terrorist with the help of Maze Hughes, who happened to also be on board the train. After that, due to saving the general, Ed is given the chance to take the state alchemist exam, kind of as a thank you. And the end of the episode suggests that maybe Mustang thought the terrorist might have been on the train, so this could have been a good opportunity to test out Ed's ability, and also maybe have him perhaps stop the terrorist without him losing any men. So it kind of shows potentially the machinations and typical strategic nature of Mustang to be very opportunistic, but also that he might see some potential in Edward as well. So there's kind of a toughness to Mustang that might make him come off being not that likable, but we suspect that later on at least his heart may be in the right place. This early on, we're still not entirely sure how to feel about Mustang. So as for the importance, I'd list this episode as somewhere between somewhat important. I wanted to say not very important, and you could skip it, because really, if you could just get to the state alchemist exam, you really could skip this one. Really, it's only somewhat important though, because it introduces Hughes, and that's a good thing, because we all like Hughes, I think. My favorite Full Metal moment is actually when the terrorist kind of compares himself to Ed due to the fact they both have automail, and they have automail limbs, mechanical arms, and how, I see I did this to myself, and I have this new arm which makes me more powerful, and how useful it is, and don't you see the benefit of that, basically. And of course Edward, due to having this because of something that happened based on his mistake, and really kind of wishing that he had his body, and realizing how important that was and how much he valued that, and of course what happened to his brother. He's, of course, does the classic "I'm nothing like you." And this is a pretty standard trope of the villain comparing themselves to the hero to say, we're very similar, but there's an interesting parallel. Later on, we'll see there are probably stronger comparisons with other alchemists and other villains throughout the show that compare themselves to the Elric brothers. Tucker's probably the biggest example of this we'll see, whereas a villain like this, it's really kind of more of a surface level thing that's really not that significant, I think. There's really just kind of the visual that gets you thinking, which is interesting, but of course it's kind of a one-off thing they don't go that deep into. Still like the idea though, and it kind of touches on some interesting themes, and there's a little bit of world building, of course, about maybe some frustrations within the country. So it is an interesting idea that just isn't delved very deeply into. As for the score, I think I'll leave this one with a 6, because it is a fun little episode that does add some plot points, even if it's not the most important. But this episode really didn't have too much to talk about, really, so if I missed something or there's something interesting you'd like to talk about in this episode in particular, let me know in the comments below. Alright everybody, thank you for listening. You should probably expect the next episode next Friday, and I believe the next one will also be another two-parter. So, until then, see you around, and stay magical.